Alright everybody, so we've got some helicopters here made with the mechanics that I'm going to be showing you in this video. This is mine, this is my main guy, the marble copter, flying shrine, marble pigeon, whatever I call it. But it's the main guy. I'm joined by Diamond WX and Nerf Warrior 50, also known as Duck, and I'm going to be calling him exclusively Duck the whole time. There we go, got Dim in the rat copter. Where's Huey at? Anyways, I'm going to set this thing up and we're going to fly about. Alright, I feel like I'm being watched. I feel like I'm being watched. Whoa, hold on. I gotta adjust that dial. Alright, there we go, we're in the air. Alright, wherever Duck is.
Where are we going?
I don't know, how about you follow me and we'll go land on the end arches. Let's go for the end arches.
You're slow.
Cause Duck can't land apparently, according to himself.
Flying this in VR as we speak.
Flying this in VR, gonna be phenomenal. Have a little landing. Take a little
What
landing.
is VR? Is that Rotoria?
Ooh, I've got two guys out of my head. Watch out! That guy got suspiciously close.
Let's play some Rocket League.
Yeah, like that one clip where I just whacked the ball.
Rocket League.
I'm
sure they all get the
reference.
reference.
For a landing.
Oh,
Alright, there we go. I actually landed on camera. No way. That's Sharon.
Oh,
Actually, I overestimate the maneuverability of
tennis ball just up.
Ow! No, I just got my toss off. He's a bit late. He's a look at that if I'm doing some stuff. I am so good. I'm so good.
Primarily violent.
He has to be the only one people though. Anyways, we got a landing. Oh. Well, Huey's found me. The clock tower's the cog. Dude needs his a vision check. Anyways, let me in that Huey-cious Huey.
No.
Oh, okay. Don't save me. Oh. Okay, we in. Take me home. The duck crash.
I have to do a front
You
flip.
need a rescue
Keep trying to do it.
I died.
I don't walk around with you. Hello.
We'll have to load the big heli.
I should.
I got
Take two. Take two, everybody. They probably know that I fumbled the first time. Oh, watch it, Huey. Nice maneuver, Huey. Wait, you're actually doing it. It's too easy. It's actually tue easy for Huey. He's not over it.
Huey's in like the lowest part.
Alright.
Yeah. Delete this seat. Ooh, ejection.
Guys, it's not engaging content. It's not brain rot enough.
Yeah.
We're gonna go into that flip roller coaster.
You ran out of fuel.
Yes! I survived. Hi, Huey. Alright, let's land on one of the...
Oh, one of these things?
Yeah, I'm gonna land on the wider one because I'm kind of fat. Wait, sharing is caring. Sharing is caring.
Very scary.
I'm sliding.
Oh wait, good landing. Oh.
Amazing landing. Phenomenal landing. Wait, we parallel park faster up. Hey, Huey!
Come over with my house.
Huey! Wait, helicopter swap? Helicopter swap? Yeah, no. Anyways, arrived. Huey, oh well, I can work. Otherwise known as, this guy is,
By them.
easy, but like, so I just kind of, I fly like a newcomer. Okay, anyways. Okay, so now that you've seen the helicopter, you probably want to get straight to building it, but wait, we need to have a look at how it works first. I mean, if you already know how a helicopter works, you understand swashplates and all that stuff, because that's what we're going to be building, then feel free to skip to this timestamp right here. But if you don't understand them, well, allow me to illustrate. Okay, now entering the knowledge bunker. This place was made by the MVP of helicopter engineering, my good friend Nerf Warrior 50. And I'm going to be using it to show you how helicopters work. Starting with demonstration 1, universal pitch. Universal pitch is essentially referring to how the helicopter can raise and lower itself, not in any direction. We can get onto directions later. If you see here, this little demonstration from the knowledge bunker shows us how when this thruster is pointed upwards, the helicopter flies. When it's pointed more downwards, it falls. If you find the correct angle, the helicopter is capable of hovering, which is why this helicopter's hover is so stable. But you may be wondering how the helicopter can even move in a direction, which is what demonstration 2 shows. As essentially a small model of a rotor, it shows how the blades can pitch themselves as they rotate. Here is a POV from the blade. So let's say I put in an input like W. Notice how the blade pitches upwards and downwards as it rotates, which allows the helicopter to be controlled, as there would be more thrust when it points up versus when it points down, causing the whole thing to tilt up. Combined with the other controls, this allows the helicopter to pitch in all directions. Alright, obligatory explanation out of the way. We can almost get onto the tutorial, but before we do, I just want to note that this will be in roughly 8 parts over the whole video. And yes, this will be a very long tutorial. But hopefully having it in multiple parts means that you can just build a part and come back later when you get the time. Anyways, enough of me blabbering and on to more of me blabbering, but in a more useful way. Starting with part 1, the swashplate. Alright, so let's get right into building the swashplate on the helicopter. Speaking of helicopter, I have this base helicopter that I'm going to be putting everything on. But you don't really need a base helicopter, I just think it makes everything a bit easier for me to build it. But if you want, you can just build all these mechanics just on a block and work on the helicopter shape later. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be building onto this block of my base helicopter, which is where I'm going to mount the rotor. And we're going to start building the swashplate. So I'm just going to shrink that down to 1 block. You want it to be like 1 block to build on. Then you want to place servos in a circular sort of pattern like this around the block. So it sort of makes this shape, which kind of looks like the fast mech suit wheel or something else, but I can't legally say that. Anyways, working with this, we want to place a hinge on the servo, and then a hinge on that other hinge to make this sort of shape. And just do that around the whole thing, so hinge, 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 hinge. So you have this sort of pattern with the hinges. Then in the middle we're going to want to construct a universal joint, which is quite simple. Just place 2 hinges on top of each other. Then move them into each other like this. Then you're going to want to move those hinges outwards like this, in the direction that they're pointing, just to make sure blocks attached to them don't stick to the other hinge. And then we can pick any of these hinges at random. I'm just going to pick this one because it's facing me. And I've placed a block on the end of it. Make it nice and thin. You could go thinner than 0.2, but I'll just use 0.2 for now. Then you want to make it smaller, and then you want to scale it into the block so it anchors this to the base. Then what you want to do is you want to place blocks here. Leave that hinge bare for now. And you want to go around with 0.5 move and place blocks like this, so you have this sort of square shape around your hinges. Then I'm going to set my scale to 0.2, and I'm going to thin these all in. And I'm going to use 0.5 just to scale them all up. Like this, so that then they're not touching the ground. Because this is going to be a free moving ring that everything's going to be mounted to. And then using 0.2, I'm just going to connect up these loose ends so that we have a full square. And then with this bar hinge, we can just connect it to everything around it with a block. You don't have to use titanium for these mechanics, by the way. I just quite like using titanium to build most things. Anyways, the next part of building this is we're going to want to take this hinge system we've built around everything. You want to take all these hinges that we just built earlier, and you want to set your scale to 0.5. Then you want to just dupe it up to this layer so that these are on the same y-axis. And then you want to move these as close as you can get them without touching. So that'll do. Like, you just have to approximate. You don't have to mathematically figure out the closest distance. Just put them quite close. Oops. And then this. And then what you want to do is you want to place a block on this, and you just want to connect them to the ring, and make sure that you're not anchoring everything. So 0.5 works to connect these, so I'm going to just work with 0.5. Wait, this nice small. So I'm going to scale it in like that so it doesn't connect to that hinge. Same thing here. And lastly, this hinge, the fourth one. It's just in, and then like that. So you have this sort of setup here. Now that you've got this sort of setup, you want to connect up these edge hinges. You want to connect these to each other. So I find that with this setup, a 30-degree angle works quite nicely. So I'll do that. So you want to make this. Then you want to scale it into that hinge. And you want to just connect them up. Then just make sure that this bar isn't connecting to anything else. So you see that, yeah, not connecting to anything. Once you do that, you can do the same thing all around it. But instead of doing that, I'm just going to dupe it round with my favourite dupe method. So what I've done is I've duped a block up here. Then I set my scale to like 7, and I scale it out on all sides, just as long as it's bigger than the Swashplate. And then I select the bar, and this, and I set my clone's movement to 5. Clone it up. I select it again, clone it down, and then I rotate it 90 degrees. Then I do that again, except I select this bar, reselect this to get my move to be normal. Move it up, and then I move it down. And then I rotate it 180 degrees this time because I've got 2 bars. And that will put all the bars in place. So that actually this is the Swashplate finished now, so I'm just going to paint it all red. For entertainment reasons, obviously. Just going to scramble it all in red. And then we can just start binding it. So the main binds that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to bind these 2 servos. You're going to want to bind them to WS. And that's actually all the binds done unless you haven't binded these other servos. They can be left on AD if they auto bind to the chair. And then you want to set them all to green torque. You can keep them on default settings for now. And then collision them off. Because you don't want these mechanics to be collisioned or they'll glitch with each other. Now that you've got that, you're going to want to save it how it is as of now. So you save it and then you load it, because I find it very useful to give this thing a little test every time. So we're going to want to test it now. So if we unanchor and press a button, it doesn't work. But that's intended because we haven't done anything to it yet. So what you're going to do is just try inverting these 2 at random. It could be these 2, but I've opted for these 2. So since these are inverted, we'll actually get a response if I hit W. So hitting W, okay, now it should be not working for the reason that I think it shouldn't work. Okay, there we go. Now let's give it a test. And input, it just does nothing. But if I invert these, there we go. We got some response. So if I hit W, it'll move. And if you see, it's pointing towards the water, which is actually what the intended thing. If W and S does this, W pointing this way and S pointing backwards, you've done it right. Now let's see for AD. So A is pointing it that way, when A should be really pointing it the other way. So I'm going to invert this, and then uninvert this. So A now does this. So I'm going to want to remember that I inverted that, but this was fine. So I reload, and it takes a bit of time to load up. And then I invert this and uninvert this. Well, this wasn't inverted because I didn't invert anything. But this one was inverted, so I'm going to invert that. So if I save and load, taking its time, this will now work. Forwards, backwards, left, right. Okay, so if this is all functional, we can now move on to the second part of the tutorial, the rotary plate. Alright, so continuing on with the mechanics, we're going to be building the rotary plate now. So that part mounts directly onto this. But we're going to actually have to make it so it's more easily mountable. So what we're going to do is scale this up 0.2 like this. Use the mirror tool to do this to have another on top of it. Then flatten it and extend it to the other side. You want to make sure that this is centered, or else it's going to lead to a lot of problems when you decide you want to place your hinge on it, like this. which is what we're going to be doing. Because this will cause problems if it's not centered, so make sure that's centered and place that hinge like that. Now what you want to do is you want to duplicate this, and you want to extend it out to here. If your helicopter has more blades, you want to move it further, so if I was going to do maybe in like 12 blades, something stupid like that, I'd move it out to here. But since this is only going to be a 2-blade, because Paul was very adamant on me making a 2-blade, it doesn't have to be as far away. Since you've got this, what you're going to do, I'm just going to paint it blue for visibility reasons, is you're going to mount a block onto it like this, flatten this block inwards, then you want to scale it in on all sides, make sure it has no chance of touching that other hinge. And then you want to connect it up to the hinge in the center. So I'm going to do this to connect it. You don't really want it coming out the top of the hinge, so try connect it in the most compact way you can. So this works for me. I'm just gonna extend it longer. Okay, so now we've got this. Now this is the part where you determine how many blades your helicopter is gonna have. So since we're gonna do 2 blades, I'm going to do this. So you want to set up the rotational duping setup like how I did earlier for the other pieces, but there's gonna be a twist this time. So you have this square up here. Now you want to select all these new parts except the top hinge. Then you want to clone it up. Okay, now this is where how many blades you want comes into play. Since this is only a 2-blade, I have to rotate it 180 degrees. But the reason that is because for a 2-blade, what you have to do is you have to divide 360 degrees by how many blades you want. And since this is a 2-blade, like I said, it has dividing 360 by 2 is going to result in 180, which is essentially a half rotation, like what I've just done. So if you see I layer it like this, it's on both sides and it's even. But if you had to do something like 5 blades, you'd have a 72, for instance. But that's not important right now because we're building a 2-blade for this. So continuing with these mechanics, if these aren't touching anything else, what you can then do is you can dupe. Well, you can't dupe this yet, you need to move this hinge. You need to move this hinge outwards by 0.6. But you don't have to, but it helps a lot for making the helicopter more functional. Basically what this is doing is this is going to make the helicopter a little less responsive so it doesn't break as much. So after you've got those hinges moved, you want to put in the blocks like this. You want to skewer that hinge. And you want to make sure it isn't touching the other blocks on the hinge. So I'm just going to skewer it by using a 0.8 by 0.8 block. I'm going to do it on this side too. So I'm going to shrink this in. And then retract it. So we have this sort of setup going on. Now what you want to do is you want to take these and then setting your clone tool to 1, you want to move it up about 2 or 3. Well, the longer you make it, the more stable your helicopter's going to be, but I quite like a nice compact rotor. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do about this much. Okay. So once you've got this, now what you want to do is you want to place an upwards facing wheel. And you want to move it 0.2 off of this. And then you want to... This is a fairly complicated part. Not too much though. You want to place a block here. You want to flatten it. And what you want to do is you want to place a downwards facing spring. And then you want to connect that to down here. So I'm going to have to move. You want to put it inside of our base block that we've got here. So, do I have a block there? Yes, I do have it. So that is connected to there, so we have this spring running through the whole thing. Then you can delete this block because it's only a structural block. Let's climb back up here. So now that you've got this, the next part is that we're going to place 2 hinges like this on the sides of these. And then we're going to connect these up with a 15-degree strut. Or maybe a 30-degree. 30-degree works better. You want to connect it like this. So you want to connect this. You want to connect this hinge. You want to connect these hinges with a block. Like this. I'm gonna make it thin. You really just don't want this part to take up much space. Okay, so if you've connected that up, you can then just use the rotational duping method, which I'm going to be using a lot to make the rotor. We're just going to set it up again. And then we're just going to dupe it round to the other side. Oh, this. There we go. Up, down, and around. And now we've got this. And then, now what we want to do is we just want to connect up these hinges to this wheel, well, the top of the wheel. So let's do that. Gonna place a block on this hinge, and then compact it in. And this is very similar to what we did last time. We just want to connect it up. So I'm using this 30-degree beam. And I'm going to use 0.1 just to connect it up to the first block. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to do the rotational duping method again. It is my favourite thing to do when building helicopters. So I'm setting up my 7x7 square. Well, it's by 16 by 16. Then selecting that. Move up. Move down. And then I'm going to rotate it. And then, there we go. We've got this. Now with this wheel, you don't want it binded to the seat. You're going to want to bind it to a switch, which is going to be... This is going to be a very important switch. You can put it on the helicopter, but I quite like having it on the floor. So, the only thing you want the switch binded to is this wheel. You want to set it to orange torque at about 30 speed. And like everything else up here, we're going to collision it off. And I'm just going to paint it blue, because I've been working with blue here. So, there we go. Everything up here is blue now. So, now, this part is done, so we want to save this. And then we want to give it a little test after loading. But we have to do a very specific test with this one. We can't just unanchor everything, because I'll show you what happens. It'll just kind of fall over. So what we're going to do is we're going to load this up again. So you won't want it to flop down like that, but if it does flop, that is a good thing, it should fall. What we're actually going to do is we are going to select everything except the body of the helicopter and the wheel on top, and we're going to unanchor. So everything is unanchored except this wheel and this helicopter. So now what we should be able to do, we should be able to still use controls, but clicking this lever, this should spin now. And if you can still use your controls while it's spinning and there's no weird physics happening, then this test is a success. And we can get on to the next part with this. Blade time! Alright, so with the blades, there's a lot more nuance to it than what you'd think. Obviously, the blades have quite a lot to do with a helicopter and can actually determine the type of the helicopter. So it's quite important to choose the right blades for your helicopter. So the general rule of thumb, shorter blades give your helicopter more manoeuvrability, but it is a trade-off, as longer blades will give it more stability. Manoeuvrability is better for more acrobatic things such as flips and responsiveness, and stability allows your helicopter to hover much better and allows for more controlled inputs. Anyways, back to our helicopter. Even though I give you all that explanation, this part really isn't too hard to actually build on. It's just the knowledge is useful. Anyways, you want to see this hinge that's connected directly to the wheel, that one there. You want to place your block, well, not that, I want to use metal. And then you want to scale it in so that it's only touching that hinge. This is a fine blade, but I personally just like flattening them. Make sure it is centered on that hinge though. And then you want to extend it out to a length, not only about blade length. I think I'm going to go for a sort of stud oriented length, so 18 considering this body's quite fat, it's quite long. And then I want to get this on the other side. It's easy enough for me to just build it on, but let's say if you were doing a bigger helicopter, you could use my favorite duping technique that I've used just so many times in this video. I'm just going to use it again, because I like using it. So I'm just going to take that, dupe up, flip around, and then move tool down. And there we go, we got some blades on it. And I'm gonna, you know what, neon pink, sure. There we go, we got some blades on the thing. Anyway, that's it for the blades, and we can move on to the next part. Alright, now that everything's working with obviously these two pieces anchored in place, we're ready to move you on to the next step. So I'm going to load up the heli again. And this step's actually going to fix the little problem we had there with having to anchor the heli and the wheel, because we're going to actually add universal pitch. This is actually what allows the helicopter to actually take off of the ground. So let's get to building it. So you want to take this servo at the back and you want to clone it out to, and there, that'll work. Doesn't need to be too far, doesn't really matter, but you just want it out. And you want it to face upwards. That's mainly just for compactness. Then what you want to do is you want to place a servo with move set to 0.5. You want to place it down and then in the corner. And then you want to get out a metal block, any mechanical block. In fact, I'll use titanium. And then place it on the end of that hinge. But then set your scale to 0.5 and just scale it in. So it's about as big as that hinge is in terms of size. But make sure it doesn't touch the back of there. Just so that that hinge is connected to this. Then what you're going to do is you're going to raise up this hinge. You're going to raise it up to about there, will work. And then I'm going to pull out 0.5. Get as high as possible, it helps. It makes it a bit more stable if you do it high. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get out another block. You put it on the end of the hinge like that. Scale it in like this. And you want to connect it. So you've connected those up. We're going to make that wider. And then on the end of this hinge, place a block. Make sure it's not touching with your blade. Then you want to make it connect to the wheel. Okay, so this is going to need to be a bit thinner. So a lot of the time you can just maneuver the blade out of the way by thinning it. So this, yeah, this should work. This is fine. As long as it doesn't touch any other mechanics, it's fine. So that's the universal pitch rig so far. I'll pen it green. And now, just to finish this off, we need to connect it back to the helicopter. So you can do this any way you want, but I personally like placing a block here, making it thin, and then setting my rotate to something like 5, angling it, and then just connecting it to the base of the helicopter like that. And then, of course, with everything, we're going to have it on non-collision. And that part is now built, but we've got to do the binds for it. So select this, and these are my personal binds, but what you're going to do is one of the binds is going to go upwards, so I'm going to use click so that I hold down my left mouse to ascend. And to descend, I'm going to use R. And then I'm going to torque this up. Well, I already did, and I'll just leave it on 45. I think it should be fine. So now you can save. Okay, save and load. And now this will fix our little problem we had where we had to anchor the whole thing. So you can finally just drop the whole helicopter for testing. And notice this, look, you can control the up and down. But you won't know which way is actually up and down, because I know this looks like up, but that can really be down, especially if your thrusters are facing... Let me put one on. If your thrusters are facing... Well, that was terrible. You know what? I'm terrible at this. If your thruster's facing like this, even though it looks like it's going up, means your thruster points down. So we're going to have to figure out which way this rotor spins. So to do that, you want to just set your rotor real slow. So 0.5, I'd say 0.5 is reasonable. Then just activate it. So if your rotor goes like this, and this will be useful to know later, but if your rotor's spinning around like this, your thrusters would be pointing in this direction. So the direction that this is actually down for this rotor, and there's two ways to solve this. If you like this being up, you can just, I'll turn this off, you can invert the rotor, there you go. Thrusters on this would be facing this way, which is upwards, with that, you see. Which is probably what I'm going to do. And the other solution is, let's invert it again, is just to invert this. So now that's actually going to point up if your thrusters are going that way. But I like inverting the wheel instead. So let's reload it up and invert that wheel. So, bird, feel free to take ages to load. Thank you, it didn't take very long. Inverted. Now saved. And that is all fine. That is all fine and good. So let's just test it. That should be all fine. Unanchor? There you go. There you go. Everything's all fine. I'm gonna slow the wheel down so you can all see that. See, look, we're all fine. This is up. What? Did I invert it? Oh, let me reload. It might have not taken too kindly to the inversion, or it could just be builder bugging out with horizontal wheels, which it tends to do on occasion. Let's have a look. Slow it down. There we go. Now this is gonna go up. Just had a little bug there. There we go. So imagine if the blade was facing this way, that it's spinning. That's gonna go up when I do that. So that's all functional. So we can move on to actually creating what's known as the opposite rotor. Alright, so now that we have this, we can get on to building the opposite rotor, which is actually quite easy to build. So you've actually done most of the building here for it. So what you're going to do is select all of this, including the attachment point for the universal. If you get an angled box like this, you want to select something pointing straight up like the wheel. And you deselect, reselect, so it's pointing you straight up. And then you want to set your scale to 10.5 for the clone tool. And then just dupe it up once, so it's right above it. And if you notice there's a little error with this, and you'll see this isn't connected to anything. So you just want to connect that to the bottom if yours is like that. If that's connected to it, fine, you don't need to do this, but mine is bad. So there we go. That's fixed. Non-collision that. So now, that is all good. And now that we've got that, we're going to want to place in a piston to fuse the two rotors together. So where we're going to get the piston, we're going to get it from here. Place it in the middle of this. Then you want to set your scale to 1. Move it down, and then just move it out. You want to set the length to 10.5, which is the max length for a single piston. Then extend it up. And let's just put a non-collision. While it's out here, might as well bind it. So what you want to bind it to is you want to bind pull to your setup bind, which for me is going to be T. And then you want push on a bind that you're never going to use, because pushing it will just break the helicopter. So I'm going to put 0, because 0 is quite a redundant bind for me. And then you can just refuse it with the piece. So I'm going to just get a view down here. So that's central. Yep, that's centered. That has been set up. But now, this is an opposite rotor, and right now it would just be doing the exact same as the other one. So let's make it opposite. So down here, on our normal one, you want to find which two of these servos are inverted, which for me are those. So I'll just paint them blue. And you'll see it's the same up here because we duped it. But you don't want these to be inverted. You want to invert these to normal. And you see these two non-inverted ones, they're the new inverted ones. So you see, it's the opposite side. Other pieces that need inverting, you want to invert the universal pitch, and you want to invert the direction of the wheel. So if it's reverse, invert it. And that's going to give you the right bind set for this. But this isn't binded to anything, if you see. Nothing's binded. So what you want to do is you want to bind the wheel. Just do the wheel to the switch. And now, there's a little trick. So in the game, there's a bit of bind memory. So the seat these objects will remember what they're binded to, even if the seat is replaced. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to replace the seat of this helicopter. There we go. So the seat's been replaced. That's going to do all the binds up there, and it's going to keep all the inversions, so we can just save that. If we save, and we load, this is going to work now. And I'm going to put the wheel speeds down to 0.5 so you can see what I mean when I say it's an opposite rotor. But I reckon you're already smart enough to understand that. So let's put this down to 0.5. Unanchor it. And now you just hold the setup bind. If these fuse seamlessly, you see it's working fine. So let's turn them on. So you see, look, these are spinning in opposite directions to one another. And you see, look, they're pointing up in their respective directions. So they will sort of mirror each other's actions, but inverted. And if it does that, you have built your helicopter right. So that's it for the opposite rotor. You've done all the work there. So now we can get on to the next bit, which is actually going to be putting a tail on the helicopter. Alright, so that's this rotor assembly constructed. You might have noticed we haven't put thrusters on it, but we can do that later. Because right now, we need to get the tail rotor built so we have something to mount on thrusters so it can actually turn. So let's begin building that. So what you want to begin with, is you want to place a hinge on it facing into the block that you're building everything off of. Oh, it should be anchored, my bad. And then inside, well, oh my god, I actually just fumbled up the order real bad. Redo. Alright, with the rotor assembly constructed, we can start building the tail rotor now. So, let's begin. So what you want to first do is on any side, just pick your favourite I guess. Just place a hinge facing into the block you're building everything on. And then, you just want to get a block, doesn't matter what, it's just a structural block. You just place it on the opposite side. Then put scale to 0.5 and squish it inwards like this. Then what you can do, get out a spring, put your camera inside, and place it on the rotating part of the hinge. Doesn't really matter, just as long as it's anchored inside of that block to the body of the helicopter. And then place the other end on this structural block. And then you can delete the structure block. So now we just have this spring and hinge setup. Now, with this hinge setup, what you want to do is you're going to want to place on a block. And then you want to scale it into the hinge like this. So it's just about as wide as the hinge is. And then you want to scale it inwards 0.2 on each side. And then you scale it in until, just using 0.2 until it's like this so that it isn't poking out of the hinge. Then what you can do is using 0.5, scale it one down and one up. And then place on a hinge facing downwards and a hinge facing sideways. And same down here. Down, but facing upwards, and make sure the sideways hinge is on the opposite side so you get this sort of shape. Then what you want to do is you want to select these two hinges and these two hinges and set your clone tool to 0.25 and then duplicate it so it's over the middle of this gap in the springs. And then with these you're going to want to select them, use your move tool on one and just move them down. But only that side, you want to move this side up so that it's wider. Then you want to place on a hinge facing downwards into this hinge and one facing upwards into the hinge, this hinge. You might start noticing this is actually very similar to the rotor, but it's just a more simplified rotor. Anyways, continuing on, let's place down, well, not a block, but we actually want to get another hinge inside here. Face it outwards like that, so it's not facing into the spring. Set your move tool on 0.9 and push it inwards, so it's like this. Then on this hinge, place a block, scale it with 0.05 until it's just not touching that spring. And now you can just use 0.5 to connect everything together here. So just scale that in, scale this down. Make sure it touches the hinges here, but you don't want it touching those hinges, so you want to scale it in. So I have this little bar connecting at this hinge to this little rotary part. So that's sorted there. And now to finish this little spot off, you want to place a block on these hinges. So place the block, scale it in with 0.5, and then just connect it up to this down upwards facing hinge. You want to do the same thing down here, so you want to place a hinge, scale it in. You want to connect that up to these hinges, like that. So you have this sort of thing going on. That's basically connected everything up, but now we just need the way to actually control which direction the blades would go in. So you want to place a servo on this block facing upwards. Then you want to place a hinge here. You want to place a hinge using move on 0.5 on the top of this spring. Then using any method you can connect that. So I'm just going to use a 45-degree metal block, I think. So like this. Scale it in and make sure it's not touching the servo. So I have this super thin little strut connecting these. Touching it like that, yep. Okay, so that's sorted now. And now, this part you actually need to put the blades on, because this has no blades. So the part you want to put blades on is these two. So you want to place a block, scale it in on top of the hinge, make it blade shaped how you'd like. And then you can just make it as long as you want, but you don't need these to be too long. So I'm just going to put them, I'll just keep them at maybe length 3. Because you see with this helicopter there really isn't much room below. for it to have these super long blades, so I think I can get away with 3. So I'll go with 3. And I'll just make them blade shaped. There we go. So these are the blades. We're on the theme of pink, I guess, for blades. So, yeah. That's actually going to be the Tailrotor mechanisms all fine and built. Each one non-collision, everything off. Put the torques up to green and put the servo angle on 90. And then you just want to bind this to whatever you're going to use to turn. So I'm going to use Q to turn left and E to turn right. There you go. And that's going to be a functioning Tailrotor system. So let's just save and load it. Alright, it's taking its time to load. Come on. Okay, there we go. It's loaded. So let's get this unanchored and QE. That's working. You might notice it's not spinning, but that's fine. We can resolve that later. So if you notice, if I place a few blocks on it, it does fall down and it can turn and rotate while it's moving. So if that works, the Tailrotor's fine. Now we can actually get on to putting on the thrusters, which is probably the part you've been waiting for, watching me build all this stuff. Alright, now we can get on to putting thrusters on it. This part arguably takes the longest out of all the parts, so you're gonna be here for a little while. Depending on how many times you want to dupe thrusters, you'll see what I mean. Okay, so looking at your rotors here, you're gonna want to know which rotor is spinning which direction. I already checked beforehand, so I know this rotor here spins counterclockwise like this. So I'm going to want the thrusters to face in that direction. So taking it that I'd only have 2, because I am a bit of a millionaire with thrusters. I got 52, but most people only have 2 because you can get them from a stage. And I'm going to be like that. I'll act like I only have 2 for this tutorial. If you have more, feel free to do as many thrusters as you like. You don't even have to dupe if you have plenty. But, yeah. So, I'm putting my 2 thrusters here. If you have more, you can place more on each blade. So you can do like 4 if you want it to be really powerful. The more thrusters you place, the actually stronger your helicopter is going to be. So higher thruster per blade means stronger helicopter. So if I was going to go for 4, this would be ridiculously strong. But I'm only going to go for 2 because it's the easiest to do if you only have 2 thrusters. But don't worry, you can make this stronger in many other ways. Either by duping it more or adding thruster weights, which I'll explain later. So, you've got your 2 thrusters placed. You want to grab them with the move tool and just bring them into your blade. So your blade's poking out the other end, roughly. There you go. And then you're going to want to use the rotate tool, and you want to point them up a good amount. So for something like a 2-thrustered helicopter, you could go for 15, but you could go for lower angles depending on how many dupes. So, for instance, I could probably go for 5 if I was going to dupe it like 15 times or something ludicrous. So, but let's just do 15 for the tutorial's sake. So, we've got these 2 thrusters in. You can non-collision them, unbind them from the seat. They don't need to be binded to anything yet. And then, that's that with those thrusters. They're in the right place, but you might notice you don't have enough thrusters to do literally anything else. So what we're going to want to do is place a seat up here, followed by a plastic block that skewers your thrusters. And then you're going to want to save it. So you save this, you load it, because that'll attach thrusters because they were non-collision. Let's wait for it to load. And it's loaded. So what you want to do is get up here, pull out a cake block, and use it to connect yourself to the thrusters. Now you can actually delete the blade that you're attached to and just unanchor all. Doesn't really matter what's happening with this helicopter, no need to preserve it. Then you can grab yourself a candy. You don't need a candy, but it's convenient. And a jet, so you can fly around with it. And you just want to fly this towards the stages. I fly to the stages here. Once you get near this waterfall area, where you're going to slow down, well, you don't slow down here until you actually enter. Just do loops here and load up the slot that we did with the thrusters with the duping config and fly yourself back over. You don't need to use the super fancy jet, I'm just using it for speed reasons. You can dismount from it. Place yourself a chair up here facing the other way on this blade. Then you just want to jump into that seat. So there we go. Then anchor all, and just very carefully delete these blocks. And there you go, you've got your first rotor built. That's pretty cool. The first rotor's sorted, you can save that. Alright, so we've got our first rotor's thrusters on, but we're going to want to get thrusters onto this second rotor now. And how do we do that? Well, I'll show you. So, you want to begin, place down a chair. Anyway, it doesn't matter, just on the ground. And just save it. You just want this saved. And what you want to do is using any arbitrary amount. I might go for like 77. Just a number I can remember. I'm going to dupe it out. And then what I'm going to do is select all of these thrusters and move tool out with 77. And then after that, place a block down here and connect up these thrusters just with this plastic block and save it. Alright, now this part has a slight bit of nuance to it. It's not too complicated, but it's a little, like only a little complex. It's very simple, but it's just a bit of sort of, it's like time travel, I suppose. Well, that's not very simple, but you know, you'll see what I mean. Okay, so you're going to want to select this, and then doing the sort of flying method we did last time. So I'm going to hook this up to a jet and fly over here with these thrusters. You're going to want to, once you're in this zone, you want to load previous. So you're going to load the previous version, which is just the one with a single chair. So you're going to want to walk over here. Or fly. Ah, can't land. Okay. Now that you landed, you want to make sure that chair's anchored first of all, and then you want to set your move to 10.5, move it upwards, and now sit in the chair. And then you can anchor everything, delete this stuff, and look at this. These are now put in the same place as up there, because that is 10.5 higher. But you might notice they are facing the wrong direction, so we're going to want to flip the directions around. So, since this is 15, I use 15 for these, it's quite simple. I could just face it the other direction, and then angle it up. And I'll do that over here. I just want to face them the opposite direction, but with the same upwards. So they kind of mirror the thrusters down here. With that done, you can save this part. Alright, now we've got both of these rotors set up all fine. These thrusters are on, they're fine, but the Tailrotor has no thrusters, and for us to turn, we're going to need thrusters on that Tailrotor. But if you've noticed, we've used up more than negative of your thrusters if you have to. This is like -6 thrusters. So what we're going to want to do is, we're actually going to just want to delete all the thrusters now, doing a bit more time travel antics. And you want to place a thruster facing any direction on here. Doesn't matter too much for these. Duplicate it up, and you want to move it inside of there, like that. And that is fine, like how that is. So you're just going to want to save that, but you're going to want to do it to the other side. So to do this, we're going to do a little duping trick again. We're going to put a seat facing downwards here, with the arrow pointing downwards. Just remember that, facing downwards. Skewer your thrusters, non-collision them, and then just get yourself in this seat. Place the cake. So you're connected, and then you want to unanchor the tail thing and delete the blade and anything else that's connecting you to it. So you're just carrying around thrusters. You can just grab your candy again and your jet, and let's fly off with it. Right over here now, we can reload. There's no need to load the previous this time. Actually, we don't even have to do time travel, which is convenient. I thought we'd have to do a little time travel there, but I guess it's not that complicated. So, now you're over here. I said to remember this is downwards, simply because you want to place it upwards next time. So you want, because this is going to flip the thrusters around to this side. And then you can anchor everything and delete stuff carefully. There we go. So you've got, see, these are facing the opposite way. There's no need to actually put any angle on these, otherwise you'd be forced to turn whenever you use them. Alright, so with this stuff here, you might notice your rotors are missing the blades. Well, not the blades are all fine and dandy, but you don't have any thrusters on these rotors. So you're going to want to transmutate these thrusters, to the one with rotors. And I can show you how to do that. It's fairly simple. So you're just going to want to place a chair anywhere around the helicopter. I'm going here. And make sure you remember exactly where that is, because we're going to load up 3 past versions ago. And we're going to want to place it in the exact same place. Well, if Nerf Warrior, get out the chair, of course. Get out. Move. Okay, he moved. So, you want to keep your mouse there? Yep, and place that in. He immediately sat on it again. But, you've got your chair in this spot for this version of the helicopter. So you want to save, and then you want to load up the previous one that has the Tailrotor blades, and you want to place the chair in the same place again. You want to make sure that's the exact same place, or else you're going to have to move them a bit afterwards. So this will load up. We got them, and that is all fine. So you can save this, and then you can select these, add the chair. Use your move tool on any arbitrary number. It doesn't even matter this time, just move it away. Get rid of those blades that they're connected to. And then hook them up with a plastic block, as usual. You might want to collision them on if they're not collision on. These are collision on, so they'll just connect to the block, so that's fine. So, those are connected. You can unanchor, hook yourself up to a jet, preferably unanchored, and just leap in the air and fly off. Okay, get yourself into the duping zone, and then you're going to load previous. Just go load your previous one, because that one has the chair and the rotors. And if I place that chair right, these rotors should be in the right place. So I've sat down, anchored all, deleted everything, and yep, they're in the right places. So I could just non-collision them now, so I'm just going to non-collision the whole rotor again. Even though I already did that. So that's all nice and non-collisioned. That is fine. We've got all of these thrusters all intact. So now what we're going to do is we're going to check their binds. Nothing is binded, which is good. And we're just going to select everything here and bind it to a switch, this setup switch. And now that might look like it's it, but that's only going to have 40 seconds of fuel, and that might not even be strong enough to take off. So we're going to have to dupe every thruster as a form of fuel creation, so that every dupe is going to equal fuel, sort of. So each of these thrusters, an ultra thruster lasts you 40 seconds, so let's create a 40-second timer stack. So you just place 4 of these, set them to delay time 10, because a delay equals to a second, and just line them up like that. And I'm just going to colour code them with rainbow colours. You can connect the first one up to your switch. So you've got this. This is an integral part of duping thrusters now. So we can save this. We finally get to saving this version with the thrusters. So that's good. That's done. Alright, so now that we've got all of these thrusters on your helicopter, we're going to start doing what are called the fuel dupes, which is going to give the helicopter more fuel. For every dupe you do, you gain 40 seconds of fuel. So let's begin. So you just want to place a chair anywhere random again. And then you want to select, well, before we select anything, let's save this. You want to save it after you've placed that chair. You want to select all your thrusters. You don't need the blades, just the thrusters on the blades. And you want to use your move tool on this chair. And just move it some arbitrary amount you can remember. I'm doing 55 to the side. And now, you want to connect these all up to your thing, but you want to do it in a more special way. So you want to make a titanium spike upwards. And then you want to connect these all with really thin pieces of plastic, so it's easy to select the thrusters individually. You'll see why that's useful soon. So, this is a pretty solid duping rig here. So, what we can do with this now, we can non-collision every piece of it, and we can save it. So that's saved. So now what we're going to do, we're just going to load up our save of this. So it takes us a little bit of time because no one's to load. But we've got that weird little duping rig here. We want to connect ourselves to it with a cake. And then, oh, I forgot something. You don't want that pole non-collision. I'm going to reload it. Gotta reload it and remember to collision it before you actually connect to it. So we're waiting another eternity for a load. You're gonna be waiting a few eternities to load it. But yeah, collision this on. connect yourself, unanchor, and then just fly yourself off to the stages again. What was that bounce? That was a wacky bounce. This dude's driving a kayak. Anyways, let's get ourselves round to here. You wanna load up the previous slot, and then you wanna fly it back over. So, you see we've got this going on. Land yourself. And now, before you actually sit on that chair, what you're gonna wanna do is you wanna select all of these with your bind tool. Like this. And you wanna connect it to the end of your timer stack. And then you wanna use the dupe tool on the timer stack. Just move it somewhere else. I'm just gonna paint this one an arbitrary colour like purple. Then connect that end timer to the start timer of this so you form a longer chain. Now that you've got that, you can actually sit yourself down, anchor everything, delete all your structural support blocks, but keep the chair. So delete all of these, and then you can save it. And you know what we're gonna do next? We're gonna do that again. So we're gonna actually load previous this time to get access to this duping slot. If you want to do plenty of dupes, you're gonna want to remember where you keep this slot. Collisioning this bar back on. You put a cake back on you, and then unanchor, and yep, we're just gonna continue this whole rigmarole until we get plenty of dupes in. So, we're going over here. Hey, look, good. Diamond RVX mentioned. We're going over here, except, and we're going to load. We're actually gonna load the current because it's our current slot, because that was a previous. Gonna want to land. Gonna want to select all our thrusters again. Hook them up to the last timer of this. Duplicate it. Random new colour. And then bind the end timer to the start timer of our new stack. And then let's sit down again. Anchor everything. Delete all the structural blocks. Save. And we're just essentially going to repeat this for how many dupes you want. So I'm just going to go until it's on my 5th slot. I think currently that slot is on my 3rd that has the setup, yes. This is I'm just going to go until I lose the slot. But if you want to keep going, you can just keep saving this slot every now and then. Oops, I accidentally deleted the chair. So I'm just going to put this on collision. And let's just keep duping it until I run out of the slot. And this is our final dupe, so let's bind this up. Binding these all to the last part of my new timer stack. I'm not going to dupe the timer stack again because I'm not planning to add more fuel after this. Just going to connect it up, anchor all. And then we're going to delete structural blocks and save. And now we can load in all of the thrusters around the helicopter. So we've got all the thrusters. So this is almost done. But the next part is going to be actually balancing it because this tail rotor is pretty heavy. Alright, so you might think everything is all fine and dandy. We've got all our thrusters, all our dupes. We got plenty of fuel. Fuel for days. But when you get inside, you can unanchor, set it up. You click it. Hold click, nothing. You don't even take off. And if I hold W, I fall backwards. If I hold S, I go forwards. So, clearly, there's something up with it. In my case, I've got an issue with my swashplate. If the controls are inverted, it's because of the swashplate down here. These servos want to be inverted, these red ones don't. So you're actually just going to swap these around, because if you have an issue with directions, it's probably an issue with a swashplate. Well, the servos for the swashplate. So with that inverted, the controls will be fine. Controls are fine now. But now, we're gonna have to solve the issue of it not being able to take off. And that issue is solved by, strangely, by adding weights to the blades. So we're going to place down a block, scale it into the blade. You want to make sure that it will actually fit on your helicopter well. Gonna make it nice and wide, and make sure it's actually smaller than the blade. So let's widen it. So, because you want these to have a decent amount of weight to them, each one. And I'm gonna use my dupe on 10.5, duplicate it to the one above, and then using my oh so cherished duping technique, I'm going to dupe these round to the other side. So let's select them. Yeah, let's just move it up. Select this, dupe it round, and then down. Then delete these panels. So we've got some thruster weights. So we can collision these weights off. And this part's a lot of trial and error. We're just gonna save it. And then you can load it again. Now you're gonna want to test if you can take off with these weights. And if these weights start getting overbearing on the helicopter servos, well, let's just see if they are. Let's do a control. You'll see. Look at this. We're wiggling a lot. You see the servo wiggles? They're wiggling a bit. That can be solved, but I don't think it's too bad yet. I don't think it's bad enough. But we still have the issue. We are not taking off, but we can fall over more easily. Even though I hit W and went backwards that time, I know why it went backwards. It wasn't because of the bind problem this time. It was because of a completely different problem. Is that our Tailrotor has so many thrusters, it is super heavy. So we're also going to want to weight the front of the helicopter. And the method to do this is by creating a spoon that juts out a good amount. I'm going to go with a quite long spoon, about 57. I'm just going to make a nice chunky weight on the end of that. You want that to just balance out the helicopter. Usually it doesn't have to be bigger. The longer the spoon, the smaller it has to be. And you want that spoon on non-collision. So you can just save and load. So now that spoon, that might balance out the weight, but if it still tilts backwards when I want to move. Let's see. Okay, I can't tilt. Oh, I'm wiggling. Wiggling, but I'm not quite strong enough to take off. And if you notice that, thruster's got an inversion. It's likely because these servos are too weak to actually manipulate the weights. But we also don't have enough weight, so what we're going to do here is we're going to duplicate these weights yet again. We'll just dupe them up, place them down. But the servos are too weak, and to make them stronger, it sounds strange, but adding a block of weight onto them actually buffs them. So you're going to want to put some weights on your servos. So let's go around adding some weights to these. So just going to extend this out. Nice little bit of weight on each of these servos because it makes everything just that bit more consistent and also stops your helicopter from inverting itself whenever it wants to do anything. I'm gonna just select all of those blocks again. Oh, oops. Selected a piece of that. Go select these blocks. And then I'm gonna just dupe them down 10.5 so they're on the other pieces. All non-collision, by the way. So let's see how this goes. So we've got two dupes of the good old thingies, the thruster weights. So let's have a go at this. Let's try flying. Okay, still can't take off, but if you notice, these aren't as inconsistent. I'm starting to think maybe 15 was a bit too much. I don't want to turn this helicopter into a super heavy mess. So I'm just going to use 10 degrees and rotate each of these to point more upwards. Not that much. Just as long as you rotate these evenly, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You will be fine. So this is a pretty simple way to sort out the issue. Funnily enough, even if you do have negative of a block, you can rotate it. Do I have negative thruster right now? Yep, I have negative 20. So, now that that's done, these are stacked, they're even. Let's see if we have better flight. Ooh, we have way better flight. Notice that? We take off immediately. So, it's essentially done at this rate, but you don't want to take off immediately. And we can do tricks with this. This helicopter particularly, real jittery for whatever reason. And it is a little wobbly. We can mitigate the wobble at the bottom. That's not too hard. But we can reduce the weight, thankfully. So, let's start reducing weights. You just want to cut off weights until it doesn't automatically take off. That's the way of tuning it. So you don't even have to reload it. You can just save it and test. Let's see if we fly. Do we fly? We fly, reloading. Ooh. Is it hovering? Is this flying immediately? Ooh. I think this is a hover. Alright, that's a hover. That's a hover. It was 2, it was between 1 and 3. And my spoon seems pretty adequately sized. Just gonna save it again, I guess. And let's actually try flying this thing around. Let's see how well this is. Alright. Okay, that's actually fine. The spoon isn't too heavy. But you're gonna notice it drifts a lot, which can be kind of annoying. So there is actually a fix to this. So what we can do is we can load it up. And this is gonna be the final step for this helicopter. We're actually about to finish this. I bet it's felt like forever. But you're gonna find it roughly the middle of it. Well, where the rotor is. Well, so I'm just gonna place a wheel upside down there. I'm gonna use my move tool to move it down. You want it to just stick out the bottom of the helicopter. You want to place a block on it. We can just move the wheel aside for now. Then dupe this block under the map, just anywhere down. Why is there a block there? You want to dupe this block straight down under the map. You don't need it too much, just under the map will do. That'll give it a good distance. And we're going to construct a little gyro to help stabilize it. So no balloons, just this gyro, I guess. And you're going to want to point this spring down. Want to connect it to there. You want to point this spring up. And you want to connect it to the top of that. You want to point this spring sideways. And you want to put it on, very important, this side. You want to move it to the opposite side, you see. So mirror, do the same sort of thing there. Move this to here. And move this to there. And now we do have a little issue. This is in the ground a little bit, so we're going to want to select everything above and below. We don't need the chair. And I'm just going to move it up with 0.5 to get it out the ground. Well, this part at least. That part can be in the floor, that's fine. And now I'm going to move the wheel back into its place. And that can also move up a bit. I don't want that to stick out much. Just a little bit. Just so it touches our little gyroscope thingy. But we don't want it to connect to it, like, at the base. So, I'm just going to check. Yep, as long as there is a gap in the base, that's fine. Non-collision, everything under here, including the wheel. Even that little block down there. And also, unbind the wheel. You could just have this wheel on red torque. It doesn't need much torque. It doesn't need to be binded to anything. You just want to save it. The wheel's there more as a resistor to sort of resist the turning. You see this gyro? You don't want to have it on default settings, the springs. Well, the wheel can be... The wheel, we're fine. The wheel is our friend. We're fine with the wheel. But we want to get all these springs. And we want to put their max lengths to 9. Their target length to 4. And just have their min length at 1. Okay, and that's actually going to give us the gyro effect, which I think we've been missing. Because they actually have to compress to create the gyro effect. So let's see if this is our final helicopter. Let's have a go. And now I think I can confidently say we're done with the build if this works. Ooh, wrong button! Wrong button! Okay, we're in the air, we're in the air. Yep, that gyro is doing its thing. adding a bit of stability to the helicopter, we are all fine. We're fine. We're fine. This is our final helicopter, everybody. Ooh, let's fly it into the stages. Well, if I don't... Ooh, music's out. Alright, so after that terrible crash, I've got a recolor and a few passengers, it seems. But, yes, I'm going to be showing you how to pilot the helicopter, because that was kind of abysmal if you saw that crash. That was terrible. And a lot of your first flights are going to be like that. You're going to do backflips and tricks into the floor. So let's learn how to pilot it. So, there is a skill curve to actually learning your helicopter. It's not too hard once you get the hang of it, but it's definitely quite new to a lot of people. So, to begin our little lesson, I suppose, you're going to want to click your switch and you're going to want to take off. Just hold click and go straight up. Get a lot of altitude. You don't need to go super high, just be up, safe from voiding yourself this early on. A lot of the time you won't even need to put in an input if your helicopter's is weighted quite well. But you want to get nice and high. Your helicopter should be in this roughly going up state, and you can use click and R to change this. R's going to move you down, click's going to move you up. Something that's important to note, leaving it on its without clicking anything, you are naturally going to fall down even if it's more of a glide. You see, I'm actually moving backwards as well. You can tell where you're moving from where your thrusters are trying to go. So, if you see, we're moving. So, this is a good height that you can learn your controls. So, let me show you them. So, W tilts you forward. S tilts you backwards, D tilts you sideways, and so does A, but the other way. You may be wondering how you're going to turn with these controls, as A and D are obviously much different to a ground vehicle, which is why we have QE controls. Q, for my instance, turns you right, E will turn you left. You can invert this if you want. All the controls, you can change them to be suited for you. I've been told I'm quite weird for using Q and E like that, but if you find it unnatural, just invert the thing you're going to want to invert is your Tailrotor servo. So you could just select the whole thing and invert. There's only one servo on that thing. So, yeah, that should give you a general overview of your controls. So now, you just want to try flying around in the air. So, something that's useful to note is holding click while in the air is good for keeping in flight. If you don't want to glide downwards, you want to hold click. So you see, I'm still going up. If you think you're going too high, feel free to hold R, and you don't even have to click anything if you want to descend more. So just get used to using the controls. Something really important about controlling helicopters is you aren't going to get too far if you use all the controls separately. I mean, it's fine for learning, but the controls work best in tandem with each other. So instead of going forward, right, then up, and then turning, you'd want to do that as a full on as if it's on move. So you'd want to go diagonals, with both inputs use Q and E to stabilize your rotation. That's what I find I use QE for, stabilizing the rotation of my helicopter. So you just want to fly around, just move yourself around in the sky without voiding. You can try getting to the ground, but like, until you've actually got used to flying, I wouldn't try a landing. Well, you can try a landing, but once you figure out actually how to go where you want, just try getting places above the map. So I'm going to try go over the end. See if you can get yourself to hover above the end. So, coming in hot. Going to do a retrograde burn. I'm going to hover over this end arch. I'm not going to land on it, I'm just going to fly in the vicinity. Get a nice stable flight. And another fellow helicopter... Hey, saved it. Anyways, you're flying now. So now, if you can sort of maneuver in the air, I want to show you one of the easiest tricks you can do with a helicopter if you want to impress someone. So you just want to start going up, and this is going to be a flip. So you can either hold W or S here, but just hold it in. It's easy. It's just you do a full rotation. As long as you're going up, you're still probably going to be going up through it. There is a little bit of nuance to the trick. If you want to make your flip a bit better in terms of up thrust, you can hold R when you point upside down, and then hold click again. That works to keep you going up. And that'll make your flips less impactful to your flight. So, since we've now got a good grasp of how flight works, you might have a few of these up, like, sky-high flights before you figure out how everything works. Let's try land it. So, it doesn't need to be at home, but just anywhere on the plots. Pick a plot. Well, we're out of fuel. We're gonna need a new helicopter. Alright, new helicopter later and newer passengers. I don't know when we got these passengers from. We can take this up and try actually doing a flight and a landing. Okay, that guy almost landed on me. That was kind of scary. Anyways, now me and all my passengers, we're just going to fly up. Just take the helicopter up somewhere. You can take it to the same altitude as before, but just take it away from the plots. Alright. Now that you're away from the plots, you can try coming in for a landing. Yeah, I mean, you can do it at the plots, but if you want to practice from a distance, do this. If you're not as comfortable as raising and lowering, you can practice raising and lowering yourself at spawn. Which I'll show you how to do after doing a landing. But I'll show you the general landing procedure. So, you want to sort of target the spot you're going to land. You want to fly towards it. Have your rotor pointed upwards. Be slightly pointed backwards so you slow down on the way there. You don't need to put in much clicks. If you want to hover more than fall, you can just click periodically, like a sort of slow spam click. As long as you're doing it periodically, you'll stay upright consistently. And then, once you find your spot, hover above it, and then let your helicopter's natural glide do the work until you get low, in which then you want to pull up, and you want to do repeated pull-up motions until you touch down, and then hold R if you want to stay in place. Now all my passengers can safely dismount, and I'm not going to float away. My helicopter's going to be fine. All these passengers, they're off. How do you get over there so fast? Except Duck, who just wants to stay here. Duck would rather stay. That guy's just going to disappear. I'm going to take off in T-5, so that guy better make it quick. Ow, got hit in the head. Now, I'll show you another way to practice landing if you're not too confident with getting far away, but I call it plot leaping, and it's where you go up and you float yourself over a plot, and then you come back down for a landing. And you want to make sure these landings are careful and not just slam yourself against the floor and hope it works. Using the helicopter like it's made for leaping is an interesting way to try get a landing. So you can just point yourself towards where you're going to land, glide towards it, and then land yourself. And as long as you're remaining upright from these landings, you're doing good. To be fair, a lot of these landings are probably going to be crashes for you at first. Landing is a hard skill to learn. So, I'm going to take off before that weird piece of salami attacks me, and I'm going to take it home. I'm going to land this helicopter back home. If I fly it back, slow down you don't want much horizontal movement, you want to be going into a glide drop. If you move horizontally, there's a higher chance of you slipping. But with that out of the way, I'd say you're actually a feasible pilot now if you've done a bit of practice with it, figured out how it works, figured out the nuances, figured out how to land. You are a feasible pilot and you can try flying that thing around the map, try anything, get creative with it. You can land on pillars, go up, you have access to the whole world now. These helicopters make the world look small because they're very fast at getting around in the right hands. Since helicopter flying is hard, I was pretty curious to how hard it was actually to learn how to fly one. So I did a little experiment. So I met this dude in a public server, Granny Gamer. Big thanks to him for helping me with this. And I managed to train him how to fly my helicopter. He went from flying like this, barely even being able to fly, to this nice landing. Seeing this, it really shows you what you can do with a helicopter, and that was only from around just under an hour of learning it, and he had no prior knowledge. He's never used any of my builds before.
That's the first
but
one.
I'll link that guy in the description, because I mean, I said I would if he could land it, and he landed it, so